open up the meeting for the Dutchess County Industrial Development Agency. Jasmine, could you please take roll call?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Tim Dean?
Present.
Mark Doyle?
Yes, yeah.
Kathy Bauer?
Present.
Amy Bondieri?
Present.
Jamie Picone?
Present.
Don Sagliano?
Here.
Al Torgiani?
Present.
Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is conflict of interest disclosures. If anybody on the board has a conflict that they're aware of about any matter coming before us, if you could let us know and state what it would be. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to assume that we don't, but if for any reason anybody discovers one along the way as we discuss things this morning, please let us know. Sarah, proof of meeting notice?
Yes, meeting notice was posted on December 4th.
Okay, great. Are there any bills and communications that need to be reviewed?
Nope.
Okay. We have some minutes from a November 12th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? And if so, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Mark.
Al Torgiani.
Thank you. One of the items before we vote, one of the items that was mentioned as part of a review of our practices is that when we do a roll call vote, my vote should be last. I guess it's best practices that the board chair not vote first, and as a way of not influencing or intimidating any other members of the board in their vote. So I'm going to ask for a vote on the minutes by roll call, and Jasmine, if you could please ask for my vote last.
Sure. Mark Doyle?
Approved.
Kathy Bauer?
Approved.
Amy Bondieri?
Approved.
Jamie Picone?
Approved.
Don Sagliano?
Approved.
Al Torgiani?
Approved.
Tim Dean?
Approved. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Marilyn, do you have a report for us?
I do. Looking at the balance sheet, we currently have 2.4 million in cash available on the balance sheet. We do show on accounts payable of 176,000. 150 of that is just what was owed to the LDC, which was paid in December, which doesn't show up on these statements. On the P&L, nothing unusual. Pretty much where we should be right now. I don't have anything to report. Does anyone have any questions on either? Yes, Don Sagliano.
Thank you. Don Sagliano. Looking at the balance sheet, the two CDs listed there, what is the, do you have handy what the maturity date is at all?
They're actually not CDs, although that's what the CD1, CD2 are money market funds, and they can be sent out for RFP at any point.
Okay, so there's 100% liquidity with those funds.
Yes, yes.
Marilyn, perhaps you could just mention really briefly the practices we do take on our CDs that we do have.
Okay, we currently don't have any CDs, but yeah. We do, our investment, we have an investment policy that we follow.
There we go. And we do, on occasion, we do a request for interest rate quotations on our funds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I need a motion to approve the financial report, I believe.
No.
Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry. Sarah's saying no. Why don't you elaborate just briefly, Sarah?
Yeah, so the board is at the general throughout the year, the board just reviews the financial statements. It's the audit that the board needs to adopt.
So this is another change, again, best practices that was brought to our attention, that the board does not need as a whole to approve the monthly report of the treasurer. at this time. Okay, Sarah, are there any reports of any other committees?
No, not this month.
Okay, any unfinished business?
No.
All right, so new business. First thing on our agenda is the approval of the final resolution for the USEF Tyrando LLC and Amazon.com Services LLC for mortgage tax exemption, sales tax exemption, and payment in lieu of taxes. Again, I think, Sarah, am I correct in stating that some of the things that we've learned is that we should have a motion and a second and then have discussion about the project? Is that correct?
Correct.
So for board members, again, just adopting best practices, what's been recommended to us is that before we have a discussion on this matter that's before us, we have a motion and a second from board members that indicate that obviously that the resolution is worthy of discussion. And then we'll have the discussion, and then after that, we would take a vote on the matter. Don Sagliano.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to
Yes.
make a motion on the resolution.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Al
Jamie
Turcani, I'll
Pacone, second.
second it.
Jamie Pacone, I saw. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to open up the floor to questions, discussions. Everybody had an opportunity, I hope, to read the records of the public hearing as well as the comments that were submitted in writing or by email to us. So I would entertain any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure that the, obviously the local workforce policy is strictly adhered to on this one. And that the companies that they bring in, because we all are aware, well, we are aware of a lot of the companies they're bringing in, they're from out-of-state companies. And I think one of them is actually a local company. And what they'll utilize is sometimes they'll utilize out-of-state values and come in here and try to sell those values to the local contractors, which they run into sometimes difficulties in doing so. And therefore they have an opportunity to try to apply for a waiver, but we see that they ran into it in Orange County. They used, I think they hit most of the policy, but the problem they ran into, they had out-of-state companies pricing at a lower rate than the Hudson Valley's rates are. And this is just normal average working rates. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen here, because, you know, we're being looked at by a lot of outside people, and we want to make sure that they do that here as well. I mean, everyone's excited of the project, obviously, and what it will do, but we want to see the local policy strictly adhered to.
Okay, at this time, I would welcome any comments from the applicant as far as their intentions are in regards to the local workforce.
Well, I'll speak on behalf of the project team that's overseeing the development and the construction. The short answer is yes, and we strive to always adhere to the labor policy and to hire local whenever we can. I'll just use as an example, you know, as we were evaluating this project, it has existing buildings that need to be demolished. While we were in diligence, our first inclination was obviously to bring in somebody that we knew that could walk through the buildings and take a look at what we were facing in terms of costs there. But when it came time to actually bid out the work, we were sure to make the bidder list full of any local contractor that we could find. And we did have contractors for the benefit of pricing that were not local. I won't announce who we are selecting, but we have chosen someone who is specifically local. And that's basically the approach that we will take, which is if we have a an opportunity to hire somebody that is local, we will most definitely do that. The only times in which we may have to give it some consideration, if it's a specialized expertise that's required for the specific scope of work, and we can't find somebody local that can perform the work, that would be the only time in which we would look to solicit somebody that would be outside the area.
Al, do you have any follow-up questions to that?
Well, yeah, I doubt there'll be too much specialty items in there, but it's more like like you mentioned, you're using for pricing. Hudson Valley is definitely a different type of animal for pricing. We're not as heavy as you're running into down in Westchester, obviously, but there's a lot of contractors up here. But if you're using New Jersey, let's say, or some of the out of the box areas to develop your proposals and thinking that Hudson Valley can match those numbers, it's going to be a difficult task to stay local at that at those numbers. That's
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, totally understand. And maybe this will be comforting for you. When we initially bid the project or estimated our costs, this is before we even had detailed engineering plans and architectural plans. We did turn to those existing contractor relationships we had for specific areas. And if they were from outside, we were sure to adjust the pricing for the fact that if it was New Jersey, it's a different price than it is when it's here in specifically within this part of New York State and within Dutchess County. So we were, even from the very beginning, making that conscious awareness application of a cost adjustment. And we've done that whenever we have provided budgets for the benefit of the review of the tenant. We made sure to help them understand why pricing may be different here than it was for a project even less than 50 miles away.
Yes. Okay.
So, John, I'm sure then that you're fully aware of the workforce policy and the provisions in it for exceptions if under unique circumstances.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Don Sagliano. I was just specifically, since we're speaking about the local workforce requirement, if perhaps Council Capolino or Executive Director Sarah Lee could comment on the process of that. And one specific question, Council Capolino, is could you opine on the fact that this local workforce requirement is also bound to a contractor within the third paragraph under the enforcement clause of the workforce requirement?
Well, yes. I mean, if they violate it and the contractor violates it, then ultimately the developer is responsible, and it certainly is enforceable, and it is for compliance purposes. I know that staff at the IDA regularly checks this. I know Marilyn and Sarah are directly involved in all of those. Sarah, you could speak to how you operate those.
So yeah, so Marilyn, so how we monitor the local workforce policy is Marilyn does regular site visits, both announced and scheduled, or unannounced and scheduled. She will make a site visit directly onto the work site and do spot checks on the workers there. And then she does a follow-up scheduled visit to make sure that, to confirm that those people were actually on the work site and to adhere to our policy. And this is a running total throughout the life of the construction of the project.
And Sarah, just to add to that, if for any reason we feel that the scope of the project that Marilyn is not able to do a, an adequate job, based on her workload, we would consider hiring or retaining an outside firm to do that practice for us. But at this time, we anticipate that we can do it internally.
Yeah, correct. So we actually, in our budget under professional services, we budgeted for that just as a,
Safeguard.
cushion.
So Marilyn, just quickly, could you just comment, how often do you anticipate, based on a project of this size, what, generally, how often do you think that you would be auditing the project?
My site visits are once a month, but there's a lot more follow-up than was mentioned. So I go to a site and I do my physical site visit and walk through, and I check their records while I'm there as far as who is working on site. I check IDs, and then my follow-up is at their payroll office, generally within 2 weeks, to make sure that the people that I saw are the ones that are being paid. To be honest, and Sarah and I have spoken about this, we just have to see. We have to see how long, how big the project actually is, how I can access the workers, and
Yes. So
we
my
have a lot
point
of
is,
projects right now. So
yep. So my point is that we will not, if it becomes too difficult for you to maintain all of your audits, we will not decrease the number. We will just retain some additional services to make sure that they continue.
yeah.
Don Sagliano, do you have follow-up?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the commentary about the enforcement and the role of the staff with regards to assessing compliance. What about the timing of a waiver request? Does the waiver request have to come before the work is engaged or during? I mean, once the cat's out of the barn, you can't, or the horse, I'm sorry. You can't take it back. So
Yes.
could we get some clarification about the waiver request and about the timing of it? Because it's all understood that there could, and certainly I'm not in the construction field, but from time to time there could be the need for some sort of special contractor, which is not within the
Yes.
the area of the local workforce area, as Al mentioned. But just if we could have a primer on the waiver request and how it is attained and what the process is.
Sarah, I'm going to let you handle that.
Yeah, so the waiver request is required before the work is performed, because they need to submit to us documents of why they need that waiver. If that's because the local workforce is considered significantly higher than what they've gotten, they need to show that, approve that to us. They also need to prove if it's specialty equipment that needs to be installed by the supplier or the manufacturer, that's also needs to be proved beforehand before a waiver can be granted. So how logistically how that is done is the company provides, fills out the waiver form and then also the reasoning, and then the staff does an investigation to confirm that the reasons stated are accurate, and then a waiver is granted.
Sarah, is that a matter that must be approved by the board, or is that a course of business that you would handle?
So it's a course of business that we would handle internally among staff if it's the falls under the parameters that are stated in the policy. If it is a parameter that is stated outside of the policy, it would need board approval.
Thank you. And again, this is all, I don't want the current applicant to think that this focuses solely on them. It's certainly part of our discussion, but some of this is just, for a review and edification of our board. We have some new members as well. Okay, Don Sagliano, did that answer your question?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were all aware of that because of the magnitude, size, but it's clearly stated within the workforce agreement that the company and by virtue of the company, the applicant, and any of its ancillary project team members are going to be signing off that they 100% understand this requirement. Okay, thank you.
Agreed. Ultimately, it is the applicant's responsibility to oversee their entire project. But yes, the contractors need to be aware of their requirements within that. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Mark Doyle.
Mark Doyle. Thank you. Two items. One, an observation, and the other a question. On the pilot, I'm glad to see and I think I understand it, so correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a little bit over a $5 million threshold before the pilot kicks in effectively. And that, is that correct, Sarah? Am I making
So the property is currently assessed at $5 million. So it'll continue to pay its current assessment during the period of construction. Once construction is completed, it will receive a new assessment. And at that point, the pilot kicks in. So that a new assessment, we're not sure what the town would assess it at, but we're estimating right now about 90 million.
Right. So the base is not changed at all. That's great. Now, questions for John DeCola, I guess, for yourself, Sarah, and council. We are contracting with USEF Tyranda LLC, and that contract is being signed by David Buck of USAA Eagle Real Estate. And so I'm interested in, and then we also have Blue Water. And I'd asked something along these lines in the previous meeting, but perhaps you could explain this for all of us more clearly so we understand how these companies fit together. USEF Tyranda is not many months old.
Yes, so that's for every project we do, there'll be a special purpose entity that's devoted just to that project. But right behind that, if you look to the principles of what that entity is, it's typically going to be the same principles on all the jobs that we do, and it'll be ourselves as within the project as the developer, and then projects also like this where there are very large amounts of investment, we're bringing in an institutional capital partner. In this case, it is USAA that is the equity for this, and we together as a team have ongoing a number of projects together. We have one where it's just a speculative project, but we've done a lot together with this particular tenant, with Amazon. The project down 15 miles away in Montgomery, it is the same team of players. So it's us and USAA as the developer and landlord, and it's Amazon as a tenant. We have other projects underway with them, also with Amazon, and then separately, USAA has done a tremendous amount with Amazon for these projects, for their expansion in many markets across the country. These are projects that move very quickly and have an enormous investment of capital that is required. So for Amazon, we're not the only team that they do business with by any measure, but I think I'll leave Brad to comment on it. But they do know that they need existing relationships that they can depend upon. So this is a very seasoned team that has worked with Amazon and other projects and is very seasoned in working together.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. At this point, we have a motion and a second, and if there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask Jasmine to take a roll call vote for the approval of this final resolution. Jasmine,
Al
maybe you're on.
Torjani?
Oh, there we go.
Did you say me, Jasmine?
Yes, Al Torjani.
All right, approved.
Don Sagliano,
Approved.
Jamie Picone,
Approved.
Amy Bondaderi,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Tim Dean.
Approved. Okay, well, thank you again, and we look forward to hearing about the development of this project and see how it moves along.
Thank you very much. We appreciate working with everyone. I'd like to thank Sarah Lee for her direct involvement and all the members of the board for considering the application.
You're welcome, and I'd like to thank the town and the school district also for their efforts in working with you to come to this agreement.
Thank you very much. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thank
You
you.
too. Okay, next on the agenda is consideration and approval of a final resolution for the Violet Estates LLC to induce project providing for mortgage tax exemption, sales tax exemption, and payment in lieu of taxes. Again, what I would like to do is, if the board feels that this is a matter worthy of discussion and consideration, I would like to ask for a motion and a second, and then we will have discussion before we take any vote.
Al Torjani, I'll make a motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
Don
Kathy
Sagliano.
Bauer, I'll make a second.
Thank you, Don Sagliano, for that second. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor for questions and discussion. The first thing I'm going to kick it off by saying that one of the things as a result of the public hearing and some written comments, we did receive a letter from somebody that had done their own analysis of the project and expressed concerns that based on their analysis that the project did not need the assistance that they were requesting. And this is a matter of the public record, these comments. And I thought I would ask the applicants if they had had an opportunity to review those comments and if they could provide us with any feedback in regards to their perspective on what those comments were.
Excuse me. Yes, this is Lou Reynolds from the applicant. I have had a chance to review the comments that were provided. I didn't quite understand the analysis that was provided. I thought that there was quite a few errors that in their assumptions that had been made. Primarily, one of the big assumptions that was made is that we were going to achieve $21 a square foot of rent for the retail space, and that's not the reality. We're hoping at best to achieve about $12 a square foot in rent, and we've actually underwritten the property to perform with zero occupancy for the first 3 years, primarily because we anticipate the need to give heavy concessions to lure any potential tenant into the space. So that's number one. And number two, I couldn't understand how they were arriving at any of the cash flow analysis. I didn't see an assumption made for any expense ratios, and there also wasn't any consideration given to the cost of mortgage carry costs that are part of the project just in general. So it was very difficult for me to understand the analysis that was provided. I thought it was I couldn't I'll be honest, I couldn't quite follow the analysis, so it was very difficult to make specific comments. I just didn't understand it.
Okay. Sarah, you had an opportunity to look at those as well. Based on your experience and your normal review of these projects, can you comment at all in regards to what understanding that you took from that?
Yeah,
Document?
so the analysis came in with very few assumptions, like Lou had stated, and so it was difficult to replicate. But if I plug in the figures from the application, as well as the financials that the applicant had provided, the analysis overstated the income and understated the expenses on the project. So therefore, like Lou said, it was inaccurate in its assessment and had made a lot of assumptions, such as continual 90% occupancy of the residential and a much higher occupancy of the commercial space.
What about the expenses, Sarah?
So the expenses, based on the analysis, I couldn't tell whether the person, they did say in their comments that they had included the full tax payment, but it wasn't clear whether they had included the bank payback, the mortgage that they will have on this project, as well as the expenses. It was, the difference that I got was somewhere around $700,000
A year?
a year, additional than what was in that analysis.
Okay, and what was that 700,000 consisting of? That was the mortgage cost and other
Yeah,
things?
so it's hard to say whether he included the mortgage or not, but that was the difference that I had. If I included the mortgage, their expenses and their taxes at pre-pilot, I got about a $700,000 difference than what was in the analysis.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments about that particular subject or any other? I'd welcome them.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Mark.
Sir, I must say I'm having a little difficulty with just the layout of your analysis, in that it's on separate pages. So making it all match up on the computer. I found it last night and wasn't able to print it out. But perhaps you could help a little bit with the residual value, because obviously it's one thing to take the mortgage payments into account, but if we don't end up with a realistic residual value at the end of the analysis period, we don't have a comparison. Could you just help us with what that number is? And then I actually have other comments.
So let me just pull it up. So the residual value I have on the project is about 9.5 million after 40 years.
Right, okay. And so that's a depreciated value. Is this, may I ask the applicant what their estimate is at that point? Because it's, they're the ones doing the project.
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of a hard time on hearing the question. You broke up a little bit. So I think you were asking for our analysis of the project as its completed value in 40 years?
Well, this analysis is not for 40 years, but for, this has been done over a period of 16 years. So essentially, there's quite a lot depends on what you imagine the real estate value will be at the end of that period.
It's very difficult to estimate what the value of the property will be in 16 years from now. We anticipate the property being worth more than the depreciated value of $9 million. I mean, if we were to sell the property, the depreciation doesn't factor into the gains received. So I don't consider that. I mean, that's a tax benefit that we get as property owners that doesn't really affect the value of the property. So we are anticipating that the property will be worth more than we are building it for sure. It's hard to determine. I mean, a lot goes into, I guess the commentary I would make on future valuation is what will all of the measurements do that are traditionally used to value real estate. So it'll be, what are cap rates doing? And if you're aware of cap rates, it's the rate of return that you would get for owning the property without any debt. What are those? We're at historic lows today. We are underwriting that our cap rates are going to go much higher in the future, and we anticipate that the debt costs the interest rate costs for debt to be higher in the future as well. So I think it depends on your assumptions that you make 15 or 16 years from now. I don't have a valuation. We didn't model it as a value. I mean, we may have done it for the pilot purposes, but we didn't model a valuation of the asset in 15 years. So I'd have to pull that up. Perhaps, Matthew, do you have anything related to that specifically?
No, just to second that, we did not model any kind of residual value for all the reasons that Lou mentioned. It's not something that generally we do as part of our decision-making process that far out, 15, 25 or 40 years. I'll also mention that in this gentleman's schedule, he is scheduling out a 25-year pilot. The pilot that we're applying for in conjunction with this application is a bifurcated pilot, 10 years with the town and 15 years with the school district. So another kind of tough apples to oranges comparison here with the schedule.
Understood. Thank you. Real estate is not certainly not my expertise, but numbers are, and interested in making sure that we make a decision, the best decision possible on behalf of the county. The other comments I had, and I discussed this with Sarah to some extent, and I think the bifurcated pilot makes a difference, is the fact that you're not contributing to the town either in wastewater capacity or in other public services. And normally there would be, we've had discussions in the past where, for instance, either sewage capacity or workforce housing was provided as part of the benefits to the general public of the project. And so I was interested to hear whether you have any, whether I've missed something in that respect.
Yes, I believe you have. I'm not sure. But we have made an agreement with the Fairview Fire District to make a payment to them so that they can support equipment purchases. So there is a pretty sizable payment that we've agreed to pay to the Fairview Fire District. We also are paying recreation fees to the town of Poughkeepsie. Matthew, do you have the number in front of you that would be the recreation fees that we are paying?
I don't have the exact number, but it's in the range of $150,000 upfront payment.
And that will be a upfront payment to help support the town of Poughkeepsie and their improvement to public areas throughout the town of Poughkeepsie. And we also are paying connection. I'm not sure about the waste management fees, but we are paying sewer connection fees, which are one-time upfront payments for our right to connect to the utilities of the town of Poughkeepsie.
And those are outside of the pilot and the
Yes, they would be
Yes.
considered part of our building permit application, and those are fees that are paid directly at the time of issuance of permits.
And I'll also add to that, if I may. The fire district, as Lou has mentioned, is not a part of this pilot. They're going to be receiving their full share of taxes, as are the library, light, water, and waste districts or taxing authorities. So those authorities are not included in our pilot agreement.
Correct. And that is typical of agreements that we see, that those special districts are not as part of the pilot. Any other questions?
I have a question. One of the reasons why Ulster County had negotiated that type of arrangement up there with the project that was in question that they utilized as an example is because previously they had some project come out that received benefits, and they did get some heat from the town, and then the Ulster County, the developer turned around and utilized the benefits and the rent rolls that he was getting, which exceeded what he thought, and sold the project for, you know, a very fair or a good profit. And are you guys planning on selling this or holding it for the duration?
I am the owner. I'm the developer and the owner. It is always my intention to hold these assets forever. I don't make a habit of building things to sell. I'm not a merchant builder. I own these assets. I do have ties to the community. I did go to Marist College. I lived 4 doors down from this property, so it's actually a point of pride for me to be a part of this project and to be part of the community I lived in for 2.5 years, specifically on Violet Avenue. So I'm actually very proud to own this property, and I'm very proud to own it for a very long time. And that's definitely not my intention as we sit here today, is to sell this property.
Other questions? Okay, Sarah, any final comments from you?
So no,
Okay. Once again, just to refresh everybody's memories, we do not move forward with any project unless it has the approval of the taxing jurisdictions prior to our consideration. And so this is something that has been approved by both the school and the municipal taxing authority. Okay, at this point, since there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask Jasmine to take a roll call vote. And Al, you better be ready because she might call on you first.
I hear that.
Jamie Picone,
Approve.
Don Sagliano,
Approved.
Amy Bonaderi,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Al Torjani,
Approved.
Mark Doyle.
No. Not
Is
approved.
that a no?
Yes, correct.
Tim Dean.
Approved. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I think we're going to move on to the 2021 meeting calendar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Yep, and best wishes with a good development of this project.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Sarah, did you want to talk about the 2021 meeting calendar?
yeah, so I just included this. It follows the same parameter as this year's calendar. It is the second Wednesday. The meetings are held on the second Wednesday of every month at 8 a.m. So I just wanted to include that for your information. Also to note, there is no scheduled August meeting.
Okay.
And then, of course, there may be special meetings in addition to these that we don't know of.
Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to adjourn the IDA meeting, and I'm going to move to the LDC meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Don Sagliano, do we need to take any action on the scheduled meetings for 2021, or is it perfunctory, just putting it within the minutes?
I don't believe that we need to, and I think each meeting is posted for public, record and notice. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes, and we post our meeting schedule too as well on our website. So it's just as long as it's in our minutes, we're fine.
Okay.
Thank you.